In the American prison system, power is usually measured in freedom. The less you have, the less you matter. But Byron Mills would spend nearly half a century behind bars and still become one of the most feared criminal commanders in U.S. history. Born in 1948, Barry Mills entered adulthood during a period of profound upheaval inside America's prisons. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, penitentiaries, especially in California, had become rigidly divided along racial lines. Protection, identity, and survival were no longer optional. They were enforced. When Mills entered the California prison system, he found himself inside an environment where violence was currency and allegiance meant life or death. At San Quentin State Prison, one of the most dangerous facilities in the country, white inmates increasingly organized themselves around a growing white supremacist group that would soon dominate federal prisons nationwide, the Aryan Brotherhood. The Aryan Brotherhood was not simply a gang. It was an ideology fused with discipline, secrecy, and calculated brutality. Membership was exclusive. Loyalty was absolute. Betrayal was punished by death. Mills joined the Aryan Brotherhood in the 1970s. Unlike many recruits who relied purely on physical intimidation, Mills quickly distinguished himself as something else entirely. He was patient, observant, strategic. He understood that lasting power inside prison did not come from impulsive violence. It came from control. By the late 1970s, Mills was already tied to deadly assaults and murder. One homicide in 1979 would later become part of a long list of crimes prosecutors attributed to him. Even in these early years, his reputation was clear. Mills was not reckless. He was deliberate. As the decade closed, his influence grew. Within the Aryan Brotherhood, leadership was earned through bloodshed, intelligence, and unwavering loyalty. Mills proved himself on all three fronts. By the 1980s, he had risen into the upper ranks of the organization. Inside prison walls, inmates began calling him the Baron. It was not a nickname given lightly. It reflected authority, distance, and command. Someone who ruled rather than fought. By the 1980s and early 1990s, Barry Mills was no longer just a member of the Aryan Brotherhood. He was one of its central architects. At the federal level, the Aryan Brotherhood was governed by a three-man leadership council. Mills served as a commissioner, a position that placed him at the apex of the organization's decision-making structure. From inside maximum security facilities, he helped dictate policy, approve homicides, and manage criminal operations that stretched far beyond prison walls. The Aryan Brotherhood had evolved into a nationwide criminal enterprise. Under Mills' leadership, the gang controlled narcotics trafficking routes, extortion networks, and contract killings both inside federal prisons and on the streets outside. Orders originating from a single prison cell could result in violence hundreds or thousands of miles away. What made Mills especially dangerous was not just his authority, but his sophistication. Prison officials struggled to contain him because he understood how surveillance worked and how to defeat it. Mills relied on layers of coded communication. He used prison slang that carried hidden meanings, ciphers that only trusted members could decipher, and even invisible ink created from citrus juice or urine. Messages passed inspections while carrying death sentences embedded between the lines. This ability to communicate covertly allowed Mills to maintain operational control, even while housed in some of the most restrictive prison environments in the country. Transfers did not weaken his power. Isolation did not silence him. Violence continued to follow his orders. Prosecutors would later link Mills to at least 14 homicides over the course of his incarceration. Some were carried out by subordinates acting on his instructions. Others involved direct participation. One particularly brutal incident in federal custody in Georgia involved what prosecutors described as a savage attempted decapitation, an act designed not only to slay, but to send a message. Under Mills's leadership, violence was never random. It was symbolic. By the mid-1990s, the Aryan Brotherhood under Mills had become one of the most powerful prison gangs in American history. And with that power came escalating conflict. In 1997, that conflict exploded. At United States Penitentiary Lewisburg in Pennsylvania, racial tensions reached a breaking point. Mills, alongside his second-in-command, Tyler the Hulk Bingham, authorized what would become known as a coordinated race war against the D.C. Blacks prison gang. The order was not spontaneous. It was planned, sanctioned, and executed with precision. Once the signal was given, violence erupted inside the prison. 2 inmates were slain. Multiple others were seriously injured. The attacks destabilized the facility and forced emergency lockdowns. For federal investigators, it confirmed what they had long suspected. Barry Mills was still commanding lethal operations from behind bars. The Lewisburg violence became a turning point. Federal authorities launched one of the most extensive investigations ever conducted into a prison gang. The scope was massive. Evidence was gathered from multiple states, dozens of institutions, and years of intercepted communications. In 2006, the case against Mills reached its climax. He was charged and convicted on multiple counts of homicides, racketeering, and conspiracy. The trial was historic, not just for its size, but for its implications. The government sought the death penalty, arguing that Mills's influence and body count made him one of the most dangerous inmates in the federal system. Prosecutors laid out a portrait of a man who ruled through fear, who treated homicides as an administrative function, and who had turned incarceration into a command center for organized crime. But when it came time for sentencing, the jury could not reach a unanimous decision on execution. Barry Mills was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For many, it was the only sentence that could contain him. Following his conviction, Mills was transferred to ADX Florence in Colorado, the federal government's most secure prison. ADX Florence is designed for inmates who cannot be managed anywhere else. Prisoners are held in near-total isolation. Communication is severely restricted. Human contact is minimal. For a man who once commanded a nationwide criminal network, the move represented the collapse of his empire. Inside ADX, Mills no longer issued orders freely. The coded messages stopped. The reach diminished. The Aryan Brotherhood continued to exist, but its most calculating leader was effectively neutralized. Years passed in silence. On July 8, 2018, one day after his 70th birthday, Byron Mills died inside ADX Florence. His death was attributed to natural causes. There was no riot, no final message, no dramatic end. Just a quiet death behind concrete and steel. Barry Mills never experienced life outside prison walls as an adult. Yet from a cell, he shaped decades of violence, orchestrated slaughters across state lines, and became one of the most powerful prison gang leaders in American history. In the end, the system he mastered also became his permanent grave. And the question remains, Was Barry Mills merely a product of America's prison system, or one of its most dangerous creations?